What's going on is the Wolf, and we back with another episode of the Wolf Has Spoken podcast. And I hope you guys are excited because I am. I find myself joined by the one and only Q, a.k.a. Right on Q Live.
Yes,
and today we got ourselves a special guest. We got the one and only attorney, the man himself, Justin K-Pack, a.k.a. K-Pac. That's what they call him on Instagram.
Thanks for having me.
But yeah, it's an honor to have you, bro. You know what I'm saying? To be able to sit down with an attorney, someone who's very active in the city of Philadelphia. You know, you get
and
to
we
see,
don't need him either. He just here.
We're good.
Yeah,
like, you know, it's funny. Real quick, before I even say that, I had an inside joke with myself when I met up with him. We went to meet up. We were with the Ocean Prime.
We went to Ocean Prime.
We went to Ocean Prime, and we were sitting down. And I'm like, thank God I'm sitting down for him to be my client and for me not to be his fucking. So you know that was that. But all in all, yeah, man, very, 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 very well known in the city. You know, you have been a part of some very high profile cases. You went viral a couple times for some of the shit that you represent, people you represented, and for the things that you know you've stood up against. And yeah, it's an honor to have you. So welcome to the platform.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So Q.
Real quick, before I'm curious why I'm not familiar. Can you talk about some of those cases?
Yeah. So we definitely, all right, cool. So we're going to definitely unpack because Q's he want to make a documentary out of this. He want to get right into it. Yo, can I take this with me to watch this?
For my notes, in case the doc is already coming out.
Let's unpack our week first,
all
and then right after we unpack our week, we going right into just to give you some time to think about you know the things that we're going to discuss. So talk to me about your week. How was your week, man?
Yeah, all right, I appreciate that. Yeah, so my week was good. I fired somebody that I've been waiting to fire for a while.
Was this the lady that was the pill head?
No, not the pill head. That kind of got pushed to the back burner. That's a whole long story for another day right now at my job. But no, I had an assistant that I hated since day one of my new job. And my whole plan was to fire her by any means necessary. Not crazy, not like
Would
some
you need
like
Justin representation? Because it sounds like you breaking this
Yeah,
up.
I can send a strongly worded letter, brother, if you need that.
But no, everything was done on the board. But you know, this is all internal thoughts that I'm just saying now that the deed is done, whatever. You know, statute of limitations is over. You know, I think. But yeah, you know, because I have my own person I wanted to bring in that was much more qualified and just a likable person.
Yeah.
So you know, now this is the funny part I would say on the show though. So she was just trash, like just a horrible employee, just trash. Also, just not likable. You can't be trash and not likable. You got to pick a struggle.
Yeah.
So once I knew I was going to fire her and everything was on board for her to be fired, it all came to a head. Cause I already hired a replacement.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, the replacement's already started Monday, whatever. The plan was to fire her Friday. I was going to fire her the Friday before, but I'm like, you know what? Let me let her enjoy her holiday, get a whole extra week of check, whatever. Friday was coming. She on some asshole shit there. That's a whole other story. Anyway, point is, I found out that this past Friday was her birthday.
No.
It was her birthday. So when she did some asshole shit on Thursday, and she's like, I ain't coming in Friday, and this and that and that. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. When I came in Friday, I was like, let's see if she come in. Like, yeah, she ain't coming in because it really is her birthday. And I was like, all right, well, still got to fire her, though, because it ain't my fault it landed on your birthday. Like,
oh, my God.
So, you know, she didn't pick up anyway, long story shorter, she still got fired on her day off, on her birthday, and it wasn't my fault, though.
After all of that, he's not going to take accountability. After he said he planned it, he got the staff to conspire. You built up a case, and then you fired her, and it's still not you.
Could at least gave her like a happy birthday card. Like, enjoy your birthday, you're fired.
Real quick, it's funny you say that. So I wrote the whole email. She actually got fired through her email. True story. Fired through her email, and at the end of it, nicely worded email, I said, happy birthday. So that's how we sent the email, and I said, you can come get your stuff with security guidance, and yes, that's how it was.
And he had security escort her in.
Next week when she gets the email, because she's probably not gonna read it until after her birthday or something like that, whatever. And she'll see someone sitting at her desk already.
K-Pack, tell me about your week.
My week was great. Other than that, though.
My week was crazy this week. I had like many trials this week and like a whole bunch of other stuff. But you know, I mean, the CJC is always just a grind.
Yeah,
it's just such a machine. I mean, everyone hates being in that building, and you know, you always see just a litany of crazy shit.
When he say everyone, he means on the DA side of things.
Yeah, and just, you know, in general, like anytime you're in that building, you're bound to see something crazy. I mean, you know, at least probably 2 weeks ago, I saw a guy, I guess, who was like a victim in a case, or his mom. I think it was some domestic violence issue where his mom was the victim, and the defendant was like in the hallway, and he just came up and just rocked this dude.
Damn.
Like in the middle of the hallway, and I'm sitting there like on my phone, like trying to answer an email real quick between classes, and I see this guy get, you know, like his shit rock completely. And obviously, I'm gonna mind my business. Like that's what you got. A million cops in the city in that building. They can deal with it. Yeah, exactly. But it's the CJC.
When you want to press charges about that, call me. Yeah,
exactly. Well, that's not our job. I mean, ultimately, it's the government's job to prosecute crimes.
No, he wants to get him off. He said if you want to get off these charges, you
fair.
I don't know. It sounded like maybe he deserved it. So
so you was to defend the guy that assaulted him.
Yeah, probably, definitely.
I ain't mad at that.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So
your week, sir?
Yeah. No. My week was cool. It was like you ever feel like anytime you end a cycle, you know what I mean? You gotta go. It's like any fresh start. You gotta reorganize and get recentered. So I feel like my week was like trying to get back on a schedule that I had to, readjust. So for me, I feel like my whole week was about that. This week kind of flew. I looked up and it's fucking of the weekend type shit. So
it's time to record.
Yeah, like seriously, I look up and it's time to record. But from a day to day, I was happy all week. I felt relieved, but at the same time, I felt like I had to go back to school on the school schedule. You know how summer was just over, so it's like, all right, I'm happy to go back, but I gotta get on schedule. So this whole week was about getting centered and getting clear and just getting the vision for the future underway for the next 6 months, because we just approached the second half of the year. So for me, it was like, all right, I want to make sure these next 6 months, what do I want them to look like, and get very intentional. So my week was good. Ultimately, I had an amazing week. I feel great. So I want to back step a little bit. So let's go to the craziness at CJC, because, all right, now getting into the case aspect, Q wants to know some of the more, I guess, high-profile cases that you found yourself involved with, and what was that like?
So I guess more recently, one of the cases that I've had is the gentleman, I guess it was last September, who it went viral like all over social media, like everywhere. It was in the news. It was the kid that jumped on the window of the lady's car in Penn Square with like the huge, biker gang that they were there. And, ultimately he's actually up for sentencing next Thursday. And he pled guilty. We worked out a deal that, ultimately would leave it to the judge's discretion, which is called like obviously an open plea.
Open plea, yeah.
But they're really looking to, put this guy away for a substantial period of time. So I find myself kind of at the crossroads where I've had to, amalgamate a lot of mitigation and try to put forward, the best possible, plan to get him, the lowest sentence possible. But it's hard when you see it's all over the place. And, every time you looked at social media, like back in September, it was like all over the place. And, he got identified. The internet sleuths, man, they found him in a week.
Absolutely.
It was
you need to hire them on your team.
Yeah, I mean, it went viral everywhere, and they found him within probably like a week. And he's been in jail. He's been sitting in on State Road on $4 million bail. His bail got raised after the prelim, and this kid with no record, had a lawful permit to carry. I mean, that doesn't really, mean much ultimately given the facts of the case. But I expect that there's going to be some media there, and $4 million. It's more than
they basically just said no bail. What I'm saying,
it's basically no bail. I mean, it's more symbolic than anything else. But it seems incongruent with the fact that people that are charged with non-fatal shootings get $250,000, $500,000 bail, and these are guys that are precluded from carrying a firearm, that have some sort of lengthy rap sheet. So it's somewhat incongruent. And the issue that we are grappling with is it a punishment that the court is going to mete out based on social outrage, or is the court going to, in my mind, sentence in the line with the goals of sentencing, which, the rehabilitative needs of the defendant, the need to provide justice for the victim. And, ultimately he's going to get up there, and I expect he's going to be incredibly apologetic, and he's going to acknowledge the fact that, his conduct's embarrassing, it's outrageous. And, but ultimately he's going to put some things in place to make sure that, that conduct ultimately is an aberration and it doesn't go forward. But it's very hard when you have a lot of media and you have people that are really, really
coming for your head.
They're coming for your head, and they want blood, and you see that with tons of cases.
Are you able to say, in an ideal world, what do you think would be just sentencing, I suppose?
I mean, his guidelines ultimately for an aggravated assault, he pled guilty to an F1 aggravated assault. I mean, the maximum is 20 years in jail, but his guidelines with the deadly weapon enhancement are 48 months. But I think in my mind, with full mitigation, I think a county bid would be okay.
Yeah. So you sound like 11.5 to 23.
11.5 to 23. Maybe at
months,
some point,
everybody months.
Yeah, 11.5 to 23 months. Maybe at some point he can earn the ability to get on house arrest if he completes programs on State Road and things of that nature. But ultimately it's hard, because I've had cases where people have actually fired a gun and actually hurt people that have gotten 11.5 to 23. And while the conduct is really outrageous, and the potential for the harm that he could have caused with
having a
firearm and jumping on a car window where there's 2 little kids in the back seat, it's boundless, and the gravamen of those consequences are not lost on me, and they're not going to be lost on the court.
Right.
But he's been in essentially in PC for 9 months at this point, and it really begs the question: is how long of a time does it take for someone to really recognize that there needs to be, some change going forward, and what's enough to punish somebody?
Yeah. So do you think that the media presence on the case is kind of like pushing the courts in a way to have to be, like, make an example, like straight up?
I think it has like an inverse effect sometimes. I don't believe in at least in our system of justice, in a perfect system of justice, you want to have a court system that punishes people based on social outrage. Because if that were the case, then everybody would want to go to jail.
Yeah.
You've seen that kind of with the Donald Trump trial, where he was just found guilty on all counts, and everyone wants blood for that. But basically, because he's such a high profile person, he's always in the media, and it's easy to get lost in the media frenzy and not look at what the actual goals of sentencing are.
Like, people are not being objective; they're being subjective, and they're allowing their emotions to obscure the judgment, essentially. Because if it was their people that was in the same predicament, they would want it to be viewed objectively, like this is what was done, not what people say should happen, but this is what actually applies to what was done.
Exactly. And I think people lose sight of the fact that, like, the legislature, people that we've elected, have set out what the parameters are for when you're evaluating what's an appropriate sentence, with the sentencing guidelines, with the goals of sentencing. And ultimately, until it happens to you or it happens to a loved one, that you want the best for them, and you want to put forth and show the judge that this is like an aberration. This is not conduct that's going to be repeated.
It's like an anomaly. Almost.
It's an anomaly, yes. And it's scary to think that we, especially in the age of social media and technology, where you have all this access to information. Yeah. And you get these high profile cases that while they're localized to Philly, they get national attention.
Yeah, yeah.
And then everyone wants to punish somebody for that, and it leaves a problem for those cases that aren't maybe so high profile, that are significantly more serious, that we should be more outraged about. Yeah. And people that really deserve in some way to have some level of punishment that's more commensurate with their crime.
Yeah, at least be held accountable to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
So, how did you feel through the process, like personally? Like, how did it impact you?
Well, I mean, I think one of the interesting things that had occurred after I was hired to represent him was, once my name came on the docket, I had a lot of, I had the Inquirer, I had NBC, I had Philly Magazine reaching out to me for statements, and I had to just make a very kind of standard statement that wasn't inflammatory or anything like that, because ultimately it's not my position to comment on a case like that. My personal feelings have to be separated from my job as an attorney, and that's a hard thing to do as a defense lawyer when you're representing people who are deemed, pariahs or these dangerous people, and you may have personal feelings about the crime that they committed, on a societal level or as a citizen in the city. Yeah. But you have to divorce yourself from those particular feelings and say, well, my obligation is to represent my client to the best of my ability. Yeah. But it was hard. I think the most interesting thing that had occurred was people on Instagram were DMing me like horrible things. And again, I don't give a fuck about what anyone thinks about me or what anyone wants to say about me or threats about it, because I know it's all just inflammatory, and I'm sure enough of myself and my job that it doesn't create a sense of insecurity for me. Yeah. But I had somebody DM me and say, like, I hope that everyone in your family like dies of cancer. Like, how can you represent somebody who did something like horrible? And it was interesting. The one DM I responded, I said, hey man, I hope you have a good day. It's not really about that. And ultimately, we ended up having a conversation. He was like, I'm sorry, I didn't want to do it.
This the cancer person?
Yeah, the cancer person. I said, hey, have a good day. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to respond to that? I'm not going to get into some pissing match with some random person on the internet. It's a waste of my time, and it's a waste of my energy.
Yeah, I'm feeling shitty after that.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, my bad, man. I didn't really mean to die.
Kill my kindness.
Not
kill
the
my
whole
kindness.
family. Like, that was a little excessive.
No, just like your aunt and uncle and your extended family. That's it.
That was extreme.
That's enough, yeah.
That was extreme.
Sorry, I'll limit it back down.
Yeah, no, but the fact that, I could only imagine And I'm pretty sure that always puts you in a tough position. So I want to know, in these predicaments or whatever the case may be, as a defense attorney, how do you feel going through the whole trial process? Let's talk about if you feel like you don't got a shot. Or is it ever a client you feel like you're not taking? Like, you know what? I'm not taking that dude.
Or
Fuck
real
that.
quick, let's see if you come across a certain, I watch a lot of also courtroom dramas. When you come across that prosecutor, like, oh shit, this person,
Yeah. So that's to unpack all
gonna be a long day.
So facing a loss, clients you won't deal with, and then when you going up against the juror and juror and the prosecutors.
So I guess the first one with facing a loss, I actually enjoy those cases where I have nothing to lose and the client just wants to stand 10 toes down. And there's really nothing to do because at that point, it's a no holds barred fist fight.
And you can just pull your sleeves back and go.
Pull your sleeves back and you figure out, something creative to argue. I think the most interesting example of that I had, just a very quick one, was in 2020, I represented a gentleman, it was during COVID, who was caught by strike force officers in a house. He runs out, they chase him down, and a gun's recovered from his person. Now I have, a property receipt that shows the guns recovered from his person. I have testimony that the guns recovered from his person. But this was before strike force officers, they don't wear body cams.
Okay.
Because they're plainclothes officers. So, most of the officers in the city now have body cams, so you can kind of see the whole interaction. And he was in jail, and his guidelines were horrific, and the offer was like 5 to 10. And he looked at me, and he was like, you know what, man, I believe in you. Like, just go run it and see what you can do.
He had faith.
And he had faith. And I said to myself, prepping for this jury trial, I said, you know what, I will figure out like some theory that I can argue to this jury to basically say that you cannot believe that he had a gun on his person despite a property receipt, despite multiple police officers saying it. And I could not believe it. Like, I tried the case, I closed in front of the jury. I basically said that, in the absence of body cams, and where you cannot see this interaction, you have to have a reasonable doubt.
No, that's a fact.
Because we know that, especially now, we've seen with that article that came out about strike force officers recording stuff and then not providing that over, that you can't necessarily believe everything that they say.
Yeah, they're here to win too.
And I argued that, and they acquitted him. Wow. They acquitted him. They found him not guilty.
Boy, good.
Boy, good. And you a lengthy caption on IG. You know everybody that shout out to my attorney. He got me out of here.
On the courtroom steps.
And he was an older guy, and he was in jail. And it was funny because afterwards, like, I remember the prosecutor just like looked down, like shook his head, and then he shook my client's hand. He was like, "Congratulations," and then that was it. So he was a good sport about it, a real good sport.
So talk to me about the clients you like. Yeah, don't you see this? Don't call me. I don't take you.
I have a philosophical belief that everyone, no matter what they do or how bad it is, they have a right to effective representation. And I think that's a cornerstone, and it's extremely important in our judicial system, and it's important for its effectiveness. Because especially when you have the state with resources to prosecute people, even if someone is a terrible person and they've done horrible things, they deserve to have an effective lawyer, because no matter how bad the defense could be or how strong the case could be, it's important in our system to have a really strong defense, because it makes a judicial system better. It makes the government earn it. It makes reasonable doubt mean something rather than just to be a rubber stamp on something else.
That's a good point, because if you were to be, let's say, posing judgment and say, I'm not taking that type of case, you prevent people who might not even be guilty of said charges from getting proper representation, because you already, categorize the fact that, they're exempt from my representation. So that's a good point.
That's true.
And I definitely respect that. That's why lawyers always are interesting people to me, because I've seen you, again, you have to believe in the system to truly want to be a part of it and uphold it in a certain regard. And whenever I see depictions or hear stories or watch documentaries, I always find myself where it's like I can naturally say I'm not like that, where just believing in the system to such a high regard that, like, no matter, just in that microcosm of example, where like no matter what the case is, I will still represent it. I know if I imagine myself as a lawyer, I would have those. Unfortunately, because I'm not a lawyer, I would be like, nah, we're not doing not this section of defendants, not this category, not you. I can't do it, or like,
And there's not to say I haven't passed up a case. I mean, what I don't like is I don't like cases. It's where I've talked about before, like divorcing my personal feelings and keeping them, dichotomous from my professional obligations. I just really don't like child victim cases.
Yeah.
Because, you know, even though I don't have kids, I really don't like cases where kids get hurt or kids are just harmed in a really significant way. And those cases I try to stay away from as much as I can.
You know, that make perfect sense. You know
I know me like these mass shootings type situations. That'll be something where it's like, nah, I'm cool. Give him the chair. Like, I'm kind of totally fine with this. Like,
I can see Q being a prosecutor before defense attorney 10 times out of 10. This brother will not be on the defense side of things. Put him in jail.
Yeah. I got the key right here. But Kobe on the other side.
Oh yeah, all right, he took Jordan out. He wanted to insert Kobe. So if you're going against the top of the top guy who has the reputation, how do you feel walking into that courtroom?
Still, it's gonna be just, hey, I'm with it.
I mean, I'm confident enough in my abilities, and I know how the time I put in, the work that I put in. I have faith in my skills, and again, I've had an incredibly good mentor that's brought me up and taught me how to do things. And you know, even if it's a David and Goliath situation, you can't have any fear. You got to go and do what you got to do against your opponent.
Yeah,
I respect it.
No, for sure.
To kind of pivot a little bit, go. All right, cool. Since we, talking about court in that regard, you already said you don't really plan to have kids, you don't really want to have kids. Are you? I don't know.
Man, y'all got acquainted. How the fuck y'all get to the kids? I was sitting here 3 minutes prior to pressing play.
It's my guy now. Yeah, so we going out later, not you. Yeah.
Man, I got crammed.
Yeah, but how about marriage? I'm not sure if we're married or if that's something also you're not for, or how do you feel about? And also, as well, part of that question, prenups. How we feel about that, and either way of the coin, we can go first.
I guess to answer your first question with marriage, I mean that's something that to me on a personal level is important. Like that's what I definitely want to have that union with somebody. I think it's hard, to really, I guess, find a partner that you can really have those feelings with, and I think that takes a long time to develop. Mm-hmm. But the one I'm with right now is absolutely amazing, and does everything to support me, and is really just exudes all the principles of being a partner and a future wife that I could ask for. But not having kids is just kind of a personal thing. Like I was telling you earlier, I just don't really have a
He's a dog dad.
Yeah, fuck them kids.
Yeah, dog dad. It's better. I've never had that fatherly instinct. But to segue into prenups. So that's always a really hot topic of conversation. Yeah. That from a legal perspective, I understand why men in general want to get prenups, and some women want to get prenups because I don't think it's necessarily rooted in I want to be avaricious with my assets.
Yeah.
But you see, like, I forget what show it is where the guy has like a lot of money, and he has the girl who is like really hot and kind of spoiled and wants to not have to have a prenup because she feels that it's like mistrustful ultimately. Yeah. But they're good documents for, if both parties agree to it, I think that it can be a good just parachute to make a potential, I'm not saying it will be, a potential divorce a lot easier. And you're not allowed in a prenup to go through kind of child custody. That's not something you can dictate.
Okay, so you can't say I'm taking this one, you take that one.
Yeah, you cannot do that. But you can detail who gets what assets, and you can detail, how much of a portion of real property or cars or wealth that you can contribute to. But that's a whole segment that I learned in law school about what's marital property and what's not. But I think it really depends on the trust you have for your partner and what you want to do.
Do you think you would do one though?
I don't know. Okay. I really don't know. And I don't want to say like, yes, I would do a prenup, or no, I wouldn't do a prenup. I think it would really depend on the situation. But I think when you bring a prenup into a conversation in a relationship or a potential marriage, it almost sounds like, well, in the event, you're like, it's like a harbinger for failure. And you're basically saying if our marriage fails, I'm keeping what I have, and you get nothing, or you get just this. And it definitely brings up a lot of feelings, and that can ruin a relationship and ruin a marriage.
So I think that I'm not against prenups, right? And I'm gonna say why, because
most men aren't.
I wouldn't accredit it to trust, and I feel like most women wouldn't be if they were the ones with the assets to give up.
Correct.
So I feel like it's a person thing. I wouldn't say it's men or women that's against. I think that coming into it, I think that it's not really. I wouldn't accredit it to a lack of trust, but more so it could, in essence, take away the struggle of a divorce and having to figure out what gets allocated. Even if you say we splitting everything 50-50 in the agreement, it's like we don't, when this marriage is being dissolved, it's like we know who's walking away with what. So it's not no extra process of
Up in the air.
what that look like,
Right.
and then I feel like also it gives someone the it gives them the ability to be able to be intentional about how they want to give their person. Because some divorces ain't always got to be catastrophic. It could just be like, yo, this shit not working, you know. But I still want to see you happy. So you can still take half. Like if you want to really get away from somebody, you can take all this shit. Just let me the fuck out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like people put it in this category as if the moment you want one, you're trying to preclude that this person is a gold digger, or this person is a user, or this person wants you for your money, man or woman. And it's like, in reality, it could just be to take that part of the conversation off the table so we can focus on our feelings. Because at the end of it, if we pretty fucked up about what's going on, the last thing you want to be thinking about is who get what car, who get what house. So I think that can help. Another thing, because I want to add to the conversation, I think that, and I don't care how people feel, I think that fucking paternity test should be mandatory at birth.
I agree.
And the reason being is because I know it's like, oh, well, that means you think your significant other has been unfaithful. No, it has nothing to do with that. As a man, I have no guaranteed way of knowing that this is my kid without these DNA results. Women push a baby out. So you have certainty. You know what I mean? I don't even want to make it a trust thing. Now, of course, we ain't going to sit here and act like a lot of men ain't find out to their oblivion that this kid isn't theirs after a certain amount of time. So I think that it's all about presentation. And if it was mandated and not put on the couple to make that decision, then it wouldn't be like the man don't trust his woman. It'd just be more so like, I want to know now to say, oh, well, you laid down with this person. That means absolutely nothing, because I could think I made a clear judgment of who I'm dealing with, and I could have made a big fucking error in judgment, and I would never know because I think that, oh, this person has my best interest, when the whole time we all know that it's people that literally have lived and died not knowing who their real father was. Right. And, you know, that's not to blame any woman, because all women ain't like that. But the fact of the matter is, if it's mandated, then it's like, it ain't got nothing to do with you. It's a fucking part of the system.
Yeah.
You know,
you get your ultrasound, let's do the blood.
And it's an equity.
Take the shit. What you need, pee, blood, or what? Spit. Take what you need.
And not to super deviate it, but just to double down even more on the discussions, I feel like if women got pregnant and it wasn't like, so let's say you get pregnant and it's like a dude can sign a document, a DocuSign or something like that, saying like, oh no, yeah, I actually don't agree with this. I don't want to have this baby, whatever. I feel a lot of women wouldn't have kids still. And a man can say, I opt out. Like, this wasn't a mutual thing to have this, to go through with this birth. So he's not bound to this too? It's just me here? I'm a single mom going through this?
I get what you're saying. You're saying if he can literally, I think you can sign over here right there, right?
You can, but ultimately, I mean, it doesn't vitiate the child support.
Exactly.
And that's
like
where
he can opt out before the baby can come out and say, no, I didn't agree to this. I didn't, no, I didn't. I thought we was doing a plan B. I thought we was doing something like that, whatever. And shit, nah, nigga, we pregnant. This is our baby now. And he'd be like, no, DocuSign that, opt out. I think a lot of women be like, oh, actually, clinic me, I'm cool.
But I like the approach, right? I think to your philosophy, I think that, you know, women will argue that the man made the decision to ejaculate in them. So it's like, that's where, because for a long time, I was like, if this was 5 years ago, right, prior to me writing any book, I'd have been feeling like, you know, like that. Like, yeah, that actually made kind of sense. But now as I look at it from an accountable standpoint, right, it's like, I'm not even putting myself in a predicament to have to sign that document.
Correct.
Of course. Like, you know, no, I'm saying now I can say that.
I get it,
but I understand it's like the philosophy of it is like, nah, like that would offset the amount of women pushing men into parenthood. But I'm like, you know what? We hold the gun first.
Of course.
You don't shoot up the club. You don't gotta go stand trial.
All right, I'm gonna bring it back. So I always think about, I have a daughter, and I always think if I was a woman as well.
Wait, what?
If I think about
why the fuck are you thinking about if you were a woman? Like,
because I'm thinking about advice I would give to my daughter as if I was a woman. If I'm in your shoes, right. So I don't really, when women say, "Oh my God, I'm a single mom," or this happened or that happened, this and that, whatever, it's like 9 times out of 10, signs were there that you were going to end up being a single mom. Yeah. But you thought you was going to be able to pressure him, do this, take on child support, this and that, whatever, and now you're a single mom. Yeah. And I feel like, but if you thought you didn't have those cards, those ace cards, whatever, those big jokers, 9 months ago, and the dude was like, oh no, I opt out. I did not agree to have a baby. Yes, I nutted in you. It is what it is. He was stupid for that. That's accountability. But now he's trying to say, I don't want to have this baby. Yeah. And I'm going to opt out legally. I think a lot of women be like, no, this game was not worth it. And I feel if that was me, if I'm a woman, I'm pregnant, if this ain't a slam dunk, we ain't together, we ain't at the baby shower, holding hands, happy, kumbaya, holding my hand through all the ultrasounds, all that shit. If it ain't that, I'm not having this fucking baby at all.
So what happened when it's all of that, and then the baby's here, and now it's none of that?
Those are the anomalies.
No.
Yes, I ain't wrote. Those are anomalies.
No,
9 times out of 10, niggas, I agree because you was gonna be a single mom. It was there. The cards was in your hand.
So you made both points. I feel like one end of it is like, yes, like women try to control the outcome and they try to control what parameters the man could operate in. You're going to be a dad, like whether you want to be or not. So I understand, but on the other side, it's like men play the game too, because it's like, it's like, all right, cool, like I want to impregnate you, but then I'm going to present myself in these ways.
He's a sicko,
and it ain't always got to be a planned exit. Sometimes it could just not work. So what, like in those instances, it's like they still end up as single moms. But what I like about to speak to my own mom, my mom was a single mom up until she got my step pop of all of her children, essentially. My mom always said, I chose sorry fathers. I laid down with them. I chose. That's what she always said. So for me, that was always one of the situations where it was like, I didn't grow up with my mom. None of our dads was on child support. None of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what type of arrangements they had, but for the most part, she said, y'all my kids. I'm gonna figure it out. My mom is an anomaly. So it's like that made me feel like when I started to grow up and I'm like, I only ever seen the example of a woman who just fucking said, you know what? I fucked up. I did it. I'm just gonna take care of these motherfuckers by myself.
Super anomaly.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm wondering like, well, where the fuck is the women? Because your first representation of a woman is your mother. So it's like, I'm thinking that women are like that. And then when I get older, I'm like, they ain't nothing like that. These motherfuckers will blame everything but themselves. It's never them. And I'm like, yo.
And I grew up with mom saying, no, ain't no pregnancies happen by accident. Go to get an abortion. You a dickhead. If you have a baby, that ain't ideal. Like, no, like, that's what I grew up with.
But also goes into like kind of what you talk about in your book about using accountability as a shield on both sides of the spectrum for both men and for women. I mean, as a man, like if you were going to, have unprotected sex with a woman and the consequences of that is that she could potentially get pregnant, you've crossed that boundary that you should have set for yourself. And you are somewhat deserving of the consequences of that action.
100%.
And if you do that with a woman that is either kind of just a meaningless encounter and you haven't vetted whether or not she's going to be a good mother, you haven't vetted whether or not you want to have a relationship with her, you're stuck for 18 years, whether you like her or not.
Yeah.
And, this segue back to the whole child support thing, if she wants to put you on child support, you're getting put on child support. And then that's your wages, your money, and whether you like her or not, you're going to have an unequivocal love for your child, but you're stuck with it. And even if you try to sign away and say, I never wanted this baby, at the end of the day, you still made that. It still doesn't get away from that decision. But
the child doesn't deserve to be fatherless because you got horny.
Absolutely,
and unhorned.
Yeah, I was only pointing out that I feel there will be a lot more abortions. That's all. Like it would be a lot more abortions.
No,
and that's
what
if the baby still go through, it's still a fucked up, broken home and all that.
But
shit.
you're saying like if they had to face any amount of consequence,
this is 100% on you.
Outside, but I feel like their consequence is more long standing because they have to raise a child alone. So it's like they come around and realize that at some point, unless they just a part of the He-Man Hazers Club and they just on the board of members. It's like other than that, they tend to realize. But what I would like women to really understand, you know what I mean? And I say this with love is like understand the effect that you have on your child's life, right? Because like I feel like especially if for the women who don't allow their kids to see their fathers, right? It's like you think that because you can't put together this family portrait of it works out that the family is destroyed, but for real, nah, like healthy co-parenting situations can still bring about a good human being.
Absolutely.
But if you allow your emotion to dictate your decisions, you feel like because he wasn't shit to you, then that makes him not shit to your child, then you are doing more damage to your child than he ever could because you're not even giving him the opportunity to let his child down. Some of y'all have made the decisions that baby dads don't deserve to be fathers after making this man a father.
Insane.
To the point where you stripped your child of the opportunity to have a father. You don't know what type of man he was going to be to your kid. Just because he don't love you, just because he don't fuck with you, just because he don't want to be with you, don't mean that he don't love, care, and fuck with his child. And another thing I'm going to pivot to, it seemed like in most cases that I've personally witnessed, the man who wants to be there but don't want to be with you is always the man that end up on child support. It's never the man that don't want shit to do with you. It's like y'all either want the man all the way in, which includes you, or y'all want him all the way out so y'all can have sole control over the decision making. And then when a child grow up without accountability or doing things that you can't handle or control, you try to blame it on the absence of a father without taking into account all the decisions that you made leading up to him being absent, which is one of the things that I got to point out about my mom because at the end of the day, for my entire life, she has always said things in the most subtlest ways. Your dad a liar. Your dad this, your dad that. So these little subtle suggestions to a kid that's very impressionable and susceptible to believing his mother because I love her, this is my mom. I had an obscured perspective of my dad without ever even really getting to know him. My dad spent 27 years of my life in jail, right, for the most part. And probably even in a little 5 or 6 months, he might be home before going back for another 7 years. We really rarely interacted. And I always only knew my dad through her perspective, which was he's a liar. He did. She made me scared of the man, right? So I'm thinking, if you see your dad run, don't tell him where we live. This is her experience. This is not. She made me think my dad was this abusive ass guy. You follow what I'm saying? And it wasn't until I got older when I talked to him, because now I'm going through therapy, all these different things. I want to confront this man and I want to know what's going on. People on my dad's side has always said, your dad's not a bad guy. Like, your dad is not a bad person. He loves his kids. He's just in jail, right? But my mom's complete opposite. Nah, that motherfucker is a liar. He this, he that. So it's like, all right, cool. My steppop was a real solid individual, a real stand-up guy. So it was all right. Thank God I got an actual father figure that's good enough to, you know.
It's not a psycho.
Yeah,
of course,
so,
my mom.
No, not even just that, but it's just more so like that. It was able to raise me to becoming a man. So I had that. So when my dad came home or whatever, he was home for some time. He always would like utter around the world like, yeah, my son don't fuck with me and this, that, and the third. So I'm just like, why is that the narrative? Like, I mean, I don't at this particular time, but at the same time, bro, you know why I don't fuck with you.
Like you did something to him.
Yeah, he was like, you act like I did some crap shit. You follow what I'm saying? So in a nutshell, I reached out and I was like, look, you know, because I wanted to be intentional about building a relationship. I said, look, you want to catch an Eagles game? He was like, yo, I've never been. I'm like, all right, I'm going to take you to the game. You know, I decided to pick an away game because I wanted to drive. So we went out to the one that was in Landover, Maryland against the Commanders at the time. And it was like a 3-hour drive. So in that 3 hours, up and back, it was 6 hours. We got to unpack a lot of shit. And what I discovered in that conversation was that it's never that he was a bad guy. He was just in jail. And then in 2, my mom was just hurt at the fact that when he went to jail the first time, she found out that he was cheating on her. So she left, took whatever she took. This was before cell phones and technology, moved us all the way across the city. So with the stories I used to hear, yeah, your dad is kicking down people's doors trying to find me. He said, yes, I was trying to find y'all. She took my son. That's my family. I'm in jail. I come home. My family is gone. Why wouldn't I be going to other people's houses that I know who might know where she at with aggression? I wasn't trying to harm y'all. Y'all my family. Why would I want to harm somebody? You follow what I'm saying? And what fucked me up, I'm keeping it a bean. This really fucked me up. When he called my mom, he said, call her. And I said, Mom, I'm sitting here with my dad. He's saying that you lying. First she said, what? I ain't lying. He said, he get on the phone. He like, so da-da-da-da-da. He addresses it. And then my mom put on the most sweetest, she sound like a teenager. Yeah, da-da-da-da. Yo, it fucked me up. So then all right, we get past that talk, me and him talk, whatever. We started to build, whatever. I take my mom off her birthday. I say, Mom, we need to talk. So we talking, and she just admitted to me, it was like, son, I was young and I was hurt. You follow what I'm saying? So yes, like, of course, like, your dad did do things like, you know, to me, but at the same time, when I look back on it, we was kids. He was 22 years old. You know, my mom was older than my dad. She like, but I was still young. I was hurt. I was moving off my emotions. So, you know, like, basically, essentially, she kept me away from him. Well, jail kept me away from him. But I could have communicated him through that process. But she was so busy not trying to deal with him that she made me not deal with him. And convinced me and all of my siblings that he was this crazy lunatic that was going to harm us if he seen us, to the point where my sister seen him on Broad Street one day and ran through one of his little brief stints of being home before going back to jail. But I say all that to say that when it fucked me up to find out that this whole time I could have been all right with him, and I had this perspective of him. Now, he did hurt what I perceived to be hurt my feelings when I was like 14. I called my brother and was like, yo, let me get Dad's number. He was like, he don't want you to have his number. You feel me? And I'm like, damn, like, that fucked me up. So I confronted him about that in like 2017 when he was home for like a brief, how long has he been home for? I forgot. Whatever. It was whatever year he was home. I think he ain't been back since. But he was like, I never said that. He said that. I'm going to punch him in his fucking face. That's what he said about my brother. So he called my brother, and my brother called me like, oh shit, I never told you, psych, no. I just ain't want you to ask him for nothing. So all of the instances in where I had some real fucking
secondhand accounts of
I really didn't fuck with him, was not even him. Right. And I say that to say to anybody out there who might not know their dad. And even if some kids go into it with an unrealistic expectation of who their dad should be. You owe me this. You wasn't around. My mom said you was this. My mom said you were that. So you got to do this, that, and third. Or you're a dad. You got to pay for everything. You got to admit. No, we are men. I'm a dad now. I'm human. So it's like, even when I make sure I raise my kids in a realistic sense, you have to go through the same thing because you're a dad as well. But it's like, I'm in a co-parenting situation. So it's like, I dealt with having to combat things that my baby mother has said to my child about me, to where it's like I have to relay the facts. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of kids don't get their dads the opportunity, even as grown-ass adults, because y'all holding on to the perspective of the moms. A lot of moms die without taking accountability because they feel like, oh, you hurt me, so you was going to hurt my kid. I was protecting my kid. You ain't protecting your fucking kid. You hurting your kid. You need to let your kid have a relationship with their father, whether the father want to have a relationship with you or not. And you don't got to force the man to be a dad. Just keep the door open. That's one thing my mom said she would always do. I'm not going to force him, but I'm going to keep the door open.
For sure. And before we pivot into the idea of talking about, like, me and my man always had this overarching debate about who contributes more to broken homes. The supposed deadbeat dad or the mom that's in these situations keeping the kids from them for their own selfish reasons, supposedly. But before we get to that point, to everything you just said, what I thought was like super profound and great to hear, and I appreciate that. One thing I always do, like on a small level, is always just say check the source. I feel like everybody has their own perspective in like processing filter settings. So whenever someone tells me anything, how I always naturally take information in general, I'm just like a natural benefit of doubt guy. It's just like once I see it, I will never unsee it. Then it just done to me. But until I see it, I'll be like, I don't know, it could be anything, whatever. So especially, and again, not to be the guy, but if like a woman's telling me something, like whether it's my girl, my mom, my grandmom, this and that, a lot of women around my life, same as your life, I'll be like, all right, I gotta hear it firsthand first, whatever.
I gotta check the facts.
I gotta check. My girl, all the time, my girl can tell me anything, not anything, but like certain things. Oh no, I saw this. Okay, can I read it too? Let me read it first.
Doing your due diligence.
Well, you see, saying it's a trust but verify.
Yeah. I always check the source of anything. Someone tells me. So in these situations, whether it's your brother, your mom, it's unfortunate, but and not saying they were doing anything maliciously, but people just have their own way of process information. Right. So before you bring your settings over to me, I need to hear this shit first.
Do your due diligence.
Yeah. And I think that will save a lot of time and confusion with many people in many different situations. I agree. Just check the source.
I think that is like transparent across the board. Like, like that don't mean you don't believe what's being said to you. Is that you have to? I got to be able to stand 10 toes on what's being presented to me, undeniably, without reasonable doubt. And the only way to do that is if I can verify that I saw what I saw. Now, sometimes I feel like some people's word is just gold, right? If I feel like you're an integral person,
some sources are that.
Some sources have proven themselves time and time again to where your word is bond, your word is gold. Right. I can just take your word. Because say if the facts were destroyed, I just got to take your word. And I know that you're not trying to deceive or mislead me because that's not who you are. I'll take it until being presented with something that can create reasonable doubt in my mind. And then that would take you from having a gold word to me having to check everything you say now.
Yeah, and a lot of things aren't malicious because even if, him, he could, if I say, you said he came in, he kind of ignored me, this and that. You be like, no, it wasn't like that. Like, actually, he kind of cool guy. You probably just, maybe I just didn't see each other. He was a bathroom.
Personal.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, and not that I meant to mislead you. It just be my own fucking emotional settings because it process that way. And now I'm thinking you thinking he an asshole when he really not that.
Well, that's what like the whole, when you talk about, your experience with your mother kind of misleading you as to who your father was and depriving you of that relationship. Yeah. In a lot of ways, what I've seen, at least in my practice, and I've read through the research, is that deprivation of a father figure, whether it's based upon, some sort of bad intent of the mother, or just because the father is an asshole and stays away from the kids. There's scientific research that shows that the absence of a male father figure in a person's life, in their formative years, in their juvenile years, in their early adulthood years, there's a correlation between that and their ability to refuse criminal influence and recognize risk-taking behaviors. And that's a very common theme that I've seen amongst a lot of clients I've represented, where I get their pre-sentence investigation report, or I talk to them and it's, didn't have a father, didn't have a, a stepfather, didn't have an older brother that stepped up to the plate as a positive role model. And when you are deprived of that as a child or as an adolescent, you may not just be a bad kid. You may not be going up to, placement as a kid, but later on, those effects that had, that absence, the effect of that absence as a child has a tangible effect on your ability to refuse outside criminal influence as an adult. And I think a lot of times what happens is we, young men who do not have a positive role model, have never had a father figure for good or bad reasons. One of the reasons you talked about where it's misleading by the mother, or just the dad is just an absentee asshole and leaves and goes and starts his own family.
In jail, so it was like for a large part of his life, he was locked up 27
True.
years.
But you didn't have a relationship with him that you could have had, whether it's through Global Telelink or whatever. It's still, there's some level of that he could talk to you and be around you. Whereas I'm talking about, mothers who deliberately keep their kids away from their dad, or the dad says, I don't really care and I want to be out, you know, and ultimately when they reach that age of majority, they reach that age where they're making decisions, their ability to refuse that risk and exercise accountability as a shield is lower. And then that's what I believe, at least in my experience, what I've seen, turns people into going into the streets, doing 100%. Things that are illegal, trying to find a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of mentorship in these principles that are rooted in high-risk behaviors that they don't appreciate, that have humongous consequences, and then they go to jail.
Yeah.
And that ultimately ends up just not being good for anyone. I mean, if you're a young man who's got a criminal record at 18, I mean, you are 20 steps rather behind everyone else in society.
And it's crazy, to your point, I feel like what's also not often talked about is a lot of young boys run to the streets to get away from their moms as well. See, because I feel like women, because they crave security and stability, they have a hyper protective nature, and because they don't know how to raise, now let me be careful with my words, women can take care of a man. But when it comes to raising a man to become a man, they can only speak from the experience of what they observe. They would never know what a man is feeling because they're not men, right? So with that being the case, when a man starts to go through his maturation stage and he starts to become a man and starts to want that freedom to express himself in different areas, and a woman clamps down on that to double down, I want to prevent my son from doing this. I don't want to do this, that, and the third. It's one of two things that gets created. They create a mama's boy because they overcompensate for the lack of, and they don't want him to work hard for nothing because they don't want him to stress, and they think that helps him, but that handicaps him at best. And then there's the other ones who try to prevent him from becoming that man that he's trying to be, and he end up rebelling against everything, all her authority, and now she has no control over him, and he goes run to the people who he's influenced by, because we as men, we're going to crave the male figure role model. It's inevitable. It's like whether it's a figment of somebody on TV or if it's someone on the corner of the block. But what tends to happen is we're very impressionable. So we go outside, these guys look cool, they get a lot of love and attention, which is what we desire, right? And we feel like, oh, this is what they're getting. How are they getting it? I always tell people respect is a global principle. How you earn respect is environmental. The way you earn respect in the streets is by violence and aggression and getting money, fucking women. The way you earn respect maybe in a courtroom is about representation, about how you play your words, strategy, different things like that. Two things could be true, but the same goals remain the same. We both want respect. So if my respect means I got to go slide on somebody, because if not, then my block look at me like I'm not a part of the solution.
Right.
And your respect is, you know, I got to come here and defend my client to the best of my ability. It's like we both chasing the same goal, which is why when people look at people in the streets and they're like, well, how did they end up here? And I know I pivoted from the mom. I'm going to tie it back full circle. People look at like ended up here. This guy just wanted love and respect. And that was how he thought that he had to get it. So not having that male figure there, because my step pop, now granted, I still had my running, but again, that was a choice more than it was, because I was like a leader. So it was more so me looking at like, I'm going to protect mine. I never set out to harm nobody. I always set out to protect what was ours. It was never like, oh, I want to be the person that, I never was a bully, but I never liked bullies. Like, you ain't about to get over on us, but you can do you. That was always my thing. So I ended up still, because when you have heart and courage and people want to come and bully you and you not going for that, that creates conflict, and especially coming from the environments we come from. But having that father figure there, it did put me in a predicament where it was that sense of fear. Like it put my household in a predicament where I didn't want to let my mom down, and I was also afraid of my step pop out of a respect thing. Not having that, if I'm not afraid to let my mom down, my mom really can't control me. She don't even know why I want to do what I want to do, or my desire or need for respect as a man, and why I'm leaning in this direction to get it. So she think I'm just young, wild, and free, and she kicked me out. Now I'm like, oh, fuck you too. You don't give a fuck about me. The world hates me. These people accept me, because you don't got to put an application to get accepted into the streets. You don't have to be nothing. You can literally, they will give you an identity. You don't have an identity, the streets will tell you, this is what a shooter does. This is what a robber does. This is what a snake does. They're giving you these different, and you get to choose out of the characters that present themselves. And the anomalies are the people that are just thorough, that have good character, good integrity. But for the most part, there's no honor amongst nobody who's maneuvering in that way. So all of this could be a trickle effect, to your point of just not having that male presence, where it's like, no, you have to think before you do shit. You can't base it off how you feel. Give a fuck about how you feel. It's cool to have emotions, but you can't act off how you feel. Like I can feel away right now about a lot of shit. I'm not about to act off my emotions without that male presence there to create that framework of, listen, express yourself, do what you got to do, but you're not going to be running around here because you're mad, being a fucking lunatic and a maniac.
And to that point what you said about the running from your mom, that was interesting. Because again, I grew up like you said with your stepdad. I grew up with a dad in my life, having a presence of my father and my stepdad my whole life. I had my stepdad since I was 7. My dad been around my whole time, even though he was in another state. Always had a great relationship. And I imagine though that cause also my uncle got life, so that was also a big part of my life. Seeing that, and I was like, oh yeah,
not for me.
That ain't the way. Like, nah.
Yeah, opposite example.
Yeah. So I had 2 father figures, a good mom, and I saw what the streets could lead to at an early age. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. That ain't really it, whatever. But I imagine even my uncle's situation did happen. If I didn't have 2 father figures and my mom being how she is, I can imagine a timeline of like, yeah, like just rebelling just because my mom's just a strong personality, and without that fear, respect of or just admiration of another man who I see. Oh no, I think this is a thorough way to live as a man, lead and be respected, whether not in the streets at all. Just I could see it as a good representation, and that was good. And also I think about as well, my mom always say that my grandmom. My granddad, typical dad from that time, abusive, cheater, shit like that, whatever. But my mom
put that on all the men back then.
Yeah, that's what it is. I seen fences,
alcoholic, abusive, and cheating.
Exactly. Family on the other side of town, shit like that, whatever. But my mom's always give my grandma respect because she never put him down. She always said, no, you have your own relationship with your dad. You'll see how he is over time. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to put no smell on his name. It is what it is. And sure enough, over time, my mom felt like he was a fucking asshole. It is what it was. And mom always give her credit for that, saying, your dad, you fortunate to have a great dad, so the reason to put smell on his name, but I never would regardless. That's what she'd always say. However, I told this story in the other episode before how me and my dad relationship, how it is now, whatever. And of course, it don't fucking matter. I'm a grown ass man about how him, my dad, and my mom get along, but they don't get along. They don't talk at all anymore. After like 25 plus years of having a great relationship at a distance, they don't talk at all anymore. And my mom can't help herself with the few times, and the only reason she even think about it now is because her grandchild is involved and my daughter. So just her little moments of emotional petty caddyship. Say, oh, your dad called your daughter lately, or you talk to your dad. I'm like, oh no, she's like, fucking dumbass asshole, this and that, whatever. They're like, oh yeah, like no. If y'all would have broke up bitterly years ago, you would have been a typical baby mom. Like you would have kicked his back in, all type of other shit.
Because he kept it cool with you.
Yeah. So I imagine, I still would have probably went down that path of not knowing my dad, or having some contention that's kind of controlled by the mom a little bit, just off of emotion and shit like that. So
I got a question for you though. We developing a friendship, so we did talk about your upbringing, right? Mm-hmm. So for the people who don't get to see that side of you, talk about you growing up and how you was raised.
So I grew up I'm an only child, first off. Yeah. So I grew up in only child. So I grew up in a split.
Friends.
Yeah.
Dark horrors, only children.
Love documentaries. It's like the only free time I get to watch stuff.
Same.
But I grew up in a split family household. So my parents got divorced when my mom was pregnant. So I grew up in a 2 completely separate and distinct households. So I was with my mom most of the time. I was with my father, part of the week as well. And I haven't really had I had a better relationship with my dad later on in life, like you guys had, ultimately as an adult. Yeah. But again, my mom did everything that she had to do. She was the best mom ever to really make sure that I was, that I had a good upbringing. Yeah. But ultimately, I started rebelling. Yeah. I started rebelling against my mom. Like my mom wouldn't let me do. I always wanted to do combat sports. I wanted to play football. I wanted to play rugby, and she would never let me do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's when 14, 15, I started rebelling, and that's how my ass ended up at Valley Forge when I was 15 years old.
And that's like a boarding.
Yeah, it was the boarding school out in Radnor.
Yeah, so that was
it was like a hardcore military boarding school.
Oh shit.
And ultimately, when we talk about having respect from getting that positive male father figure, my dad was always someone that I looked up to, but I had a relationship with him from a distance. My dad, he was an immigrant from Croatia. My grandma was extremely hard on him. He moved, he was born the very end of World War II. My dad's 80. He's up there. Oh, yeah. So, he came from nothing in this country. So he had my grandma was really, really tough on my dad. And I admired her for that, but she was always nice to me. But, my dad didn't have a father. So he didn't have any example of how to be a dad to anyone. So we had a kind of a relationship from a distance growing up. But, in that same vein, when we talk about having that positive male father figure, that's only, in my mind, kind of the one recipe for success as a young man. I mean, I think you also have to have you have to cultivate, either through your environment or otherwise, a sense of self-discipline.
100%.
And that ties into accountability.
100%.
And that's how I did that through the military. And I tell people this all the time, you know, the military is not for everyone, but it completely saved my life and it changed my outlook.
Yeah.
Because for the first time in my life, I had real structure. I had real rules that I had to follow. I had values and principles that were instilled upon me that to this day permeate every part of my existence, you know, with regard to how I operate, how I think, the habits that I've created for myself, both good and bad to some degree. You know, one of the things I still do is I eat too fast. You probably saw that too.
Yeah. He was done his shit before I was
scoop my food down in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But you know, that sense of self-discipline is something that's very much lacking, I think, in today's youth. And I think that's the hard part about, you know, why there's so much crime. I think, you know, not to bring it through, this way, but you know, with the crime with the youth nowadays, I think, you know, we see so many young kids with guns 100%. Committing shootings, carjackings. And, you know, I always ask myself, like, well, why is this happening? What can we do to change it? And how, like, why is this such a phenomenon that's occurring? Yeah. And I think that, you know, the first part, you know, is very obvious. There's just an incredible amount of access to weapons. I mean, you can 3D print them. You know, you got older gentlemen buying them for kids. And it kind of goes into, like, the whole respect thing. I'm looking for respect. I want to get a gun. I got to go, you know, do what I got to do to my ops and this, that, and the third. And technology with how much there's access where you can get offended off of TikTok or offended off of an Instagram comment, which is what we didn't have growing up.
Yeah, we had to deal with that.
Yeah, we didn't have to. And we didn't have access to guns in that prolific sense. I mean, you could probably get it if you wanted to back in.
Your enemies all the
time.
Enemies all the time.
All the time.
And you get in a fight in the schoolyard, you get your ass whooped. Only the neighborhood know.
Yeah. Or you call your brother and you go deal with it, and then you guys can squash the beef. You know, and you can move on. And now it just is, you know, 15, 16-year-old kids having these crazy beefs and shooting each other, and it's horrible. And I feel awful when I represent these kids and I see, like, you know, I represent a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old who's charged as an adult for an aggravated assault for a shooting. And, you know, their life's so potentially fucked up. And I know deep down, like, you know, as much as the juvenile system is geared towards rehabilitation, it's not going to fucking help them. They're going to go up to placement. It's going to be the same shit. They're going to
need the same resources. That's going to just further entice
but
them.
It's just going to make them want to rebel.
100%.
Because especially when you go to jail or when you're in placement, there's a culture there that isn't really conducive, doesn't help you when you go out. And I wish that there was a better way to say.
You think military school would be better?
I think absolutely.
Like that would be a better alternative for these kids.
Absolutely.
I like go to fucking war. Like, yo,
no, not war.
Not even war, but I think if you
send these niggas to war, like, y'all want to go shoot somebody, go do some shit over there.
I'll tell you.
Or military school.
Right, but to some degree, like, if you have a 17-year-old kid who's troubled, who comes from a busted home, who, like, has no direction, say, look, you're charged with you know, some horrible crime or some, you know, you're carrying a gun. If you go and join the military and you sign a 4-year contract and you go away, I'll find you not guilty. I'll terminate your case. And then you're not only presenting that young man with an opportunity to completely change their life, but you're presenting them with an opportunity to instill values of hard work, instill some self-discipline. And it's ultimately, at the end of the day, like, it ties back to, it's on that young man to make that decision.
100%.
No one can force you to go in and do that.
Jail or this, essentially.
But you go to boot camp, you do what you have to do, you get yelled at, you do 1 million push-ups, and it's not fun, you don't have a cell phone, but you build a sense of camaraderie with other people, and you learn to lead, you learn to be an effective follower, you learn to do things, you know, have good habits, you know, make your bed, clean your weapon, press your uniform.
Y'all gonna get this motherfucker another weapon, then you just go with this shit should be contingent.
But I mean, how fun? But you can, I mean, even also, like, on a joking thing.
Proper gun management is
but how many people you think would take that offer though?
So I think that,
like, percentage wise.
Some people just feel like they would just go to some people is more comfortable just going to jail.
I agree.
I'm gonna tell you.
That's why I kind of think it need to be enforced.
Yeah. Some people are more comfortable going
to
jail because they get to get snacks and they get to be in the day room.
Everybody know there.
But we can't do forced conscription though. That's the problem, because you can't force someone to join the military.
Yeah.
That's why we have the draft. But I mean, giving them at least the option and saying, look, you can avail yourself to this.
So maybe them people come out without a record. Maybe we incentivize.
Yeah,
them.
come out without a record.
You come out spotless, no record.
You come out without a record.
You still think they're going to jail?
I'm saying draft. Like,
this nigga's crazy. Hey, real quick though, because I was holding on to this point that you made that was extremely important when you talk about your experience in the military and what it taught you, the core values, the discipline. That is also what lacks in a fatherless household.
Correct.
So it's like that key component is why the young men don't want to take accountability because the maternal parental figure is going to parent from a nurturing, loving standpoint and a protecting standpoint. So it's more let me find a way for my child not to be wrong than it is let me hold this child accountable to strip them of sad behaviors that can sprout into something that could be drastic for everybody.
And they don't see dad coming home like after a hard day's work, giving mom a kiss and saying like, hey, I had a hard day at work, or saying, you know, go to school, pay attention. It's important because I was able to get this job and this is how I was able to do it, and having those values. And when you're deprived from a father figure that can sit down and have like essentially a no bullshit conversation with you as a young man and say, listen, you know, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You're going to have days that are going to fucking suck, that you're going to want to give up, that you're not going to want to go to work, that you're going to want to take the easy route. Yeah. But you have to push through it.
But and to your point, even further elaborate too, is like one of them things where it's like not having that man in the house or whatever the case may be, not having that discipline, those morals, those values, when they go out into the world don't operate like that, right? So it's a culture shock. So you're used to doing things and getting a slap on the wrist. So now you go commit some of the most heinous crimes and offenses, and you expect people to be lenient on you, but the world just don't work like that.
It doesn't.
So I set them up for failure, and then it's like that's where the whole lack of accountability then come in at, because they can't for the life of them understand why they're being punished in a way that's this absurd in their perspective, but it's simply because they grew up being nurtured and not really being taught to understand the actions and the consequence that follow their actions. So it's like having those morals, those values, those discipline is when accountability becomes a shield, because it gives you that critical thinking ability to have conflict resolution that's not emotionally tied. So it's like, you know what? If I do this, it might be some serious consequences behind this, whether by the law or just by way of somebody wanting to be, you know, that becomes my opposition. With when you just being parented from love, and then you start to become a rebel, right? Because it's like, all right, you're loving me, you're protecting me, but you're also stripping me of my freedom. I'm going to go out here and do whatever the fuck I want to do because I'm not used to getting in trouble at home.
And that's the culture of easiness. That's the expectation of easiness that has permeated our culture. Yes. Everything should be easy. Everything should be handed to me. Everything should be easy. And when we stray away from that aspect of running towards things that are difficult, or availing yourself to things that are difficult, which inevitably cultivate good self-reflection. It cultivates learning. It cultivates self-discipline, you know, and that's what really reins it in on a deeply personal level. Because like you say in your book, like the only person that can change is you. I mean, you have to set your own boundaries. You have to set your own principles. You can't rely on anyone else to set those principles up. You can be affected by the lack of a good father figure. You can be affected by 100%. A helicopter parent or a mother who deprives you from, you know, any sort of good parental influence. But when we push this culture of everything should be easy, you should come home, you don't have to make your bed, you don't have to do any of this stuff, you're setting kids up to go out in a world that is not fucking easy
at all. They don't give a fuck about you.
They don't, and doesn't give a fuck, and it's a cruel world.
Cruel.
But when you are
good people in it, that was cruel.
Yeah, but when you're ready and you're able to face difficulty and, you know, and shrug it off and say, all right, that sucked, but I'm not going to let it faze me. I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow. It creates more accountable people, and we need that more than ever with young men. We need more examples of people that have been there, that have struggled, that have done hard work, and even more so in my mind, more than ever, especially with this problem, is men who have changed their lives around, who have lived that life, to be able to mentor these kids and say, please don't fuck your life up in the way that I fucked my life up.
And that's why I always try to be very adamant about mentoring, right? Because it's like, my brother said something that was interesting to me, because I got real bad survivor's remorse. Like, it's really one of them things where it's like, when you grew up in environments and people you love, the people you recognize, you're familiar with, you knew these people since y'all was toddlers. Say you all running this race, and they not, when you look up, they're not there, right? And it's like, you start to question, like, damn, why me, right? Like, damn, like, how was I was with you, or, you know, I hung with you every day. Like, these circumstances that fell on you could have very much been 6 inches to the left and been my situation. You follow me? So you feel guilty, essentially, because you feel like, damn, that's why it's kind of a challenge for people to get away from their hood friends, because you don't want to leave the people you love behind to face the inevitable, right? But eventually you become accountable and you're like, you know what? I have to kind of remove myself in order to create better for my family. But my brother said something to me that was key, and he was just like, you know, that's why we made it out. was for us to go back and tell the young bulls what they're up against and how to navigate through it. And you can't save them all because some of them choose that fate, right? Like you said, send them to war, right? But a lot of the kids that commit these senseless, what people would deem to be senseless crimes, is actually more thought out than one would get credit for. It's only stupid on the other end of it, but going into it, it makes sense to them because of their value system. So you got to change the value system to change the outcome and the decisions that a child would make or a young man would make when he's thinking about going to war. It's not like, oh, I just want to be a fucking demon or a shooter. Some of these young boys is truly scared for their life, right? So to that, in their own logic, I have to do whatever. They're scared. If I see you, oh shit, I don't know what to do. I'm shooting you because you're going to try to harm me. That's one. So they don't have the emotional maturity. They haven't developed in that way to understand the environment that they're in when they're doing these things. You know, and this not to offset the people who are literally deliberately going out to gain favor and doing these things. And the other end of it is the emotional attachment to the people you love. And it's like, people don't understand. It's like, if something happened to your kid, you're not going to think rational either. Mm-hmm. So it's like, when you come up with somebody all day, every day, your mom, your grandma, something happened to that person, you're going to do anything to protect the people you love as well. It's ways to go about it, which is what the other side would argue. But the fact of the matter is, we can't remove the human side of what goes into those decisions. That don't justify it. This is why when I mentor and I say, look, I ain't walking in here telling you what to do or what not to do. I just want to offer you an alternative. I don't know what decision you're going to make, but you're going to be responsible for the decisions you make, but you will not have the excuse of saying, I did not know nothing else, because I'm showing you that you can come from these environments and be the anomaly. The anomaly don't always mean you make it to the NBA. The anomaly don't mean you go on to be a fucking doctor or you go on to be a successful rapper or a football player. Sometimes the anomaly just means removing yourself and raising your family and being the same protector you would be for your block to the people in your fucking household. Because Facts. If you got that type of presence and people need you there, then imagine the people that need you and your family. Think about it like this. You also got to understand the amount of strain you put on your family when they got to sit through a trial, when they got to do a bid with you. If you get sentenced to 10 years, you don't do that 10 years alone. You expect the people that was with you when you was out here to do that 10 years with you. And in doing so, they got to press 1 or 5 depending on where you at. They got to make JPays or put global on their phone or all of these different things. So now you become a bill because you're handicapped. You're getting paid 12 cents an hour where you at. You can't take care of yourself. They got to take care of attorney fees. And on top of that, they are left to deal with the shit the mess you made. So now they got to fear for their life because depending on how the other people feel, they might want to come for your loved ones to make you feel how they feel. And you got to know that going into the decisions you're making. If you don't understand that process and you can't stand 10 toes on that, then you don't need to be doing it. If you don't want to stand 10, then y'all want to get in these situations, y'all want to start putting other people in jail, giving up motherfuckers hiding spots and telling us like, no, part of being accountable is understanding that I signed up for this. I got to live with my choices. If you can't live with your choices, then get the fuck out the car. Literally, just say, no, you know what? And that's where you can't think emotionally. You gotta think long term. What do you want your life to look like? This cannot be affiliated and associated to your peers because everybody's life is gonna look different. You have to isolate yourself and say, I know that I love these people, but what do I want my life to look like? And when you make that decision, you gotta stand on that. Like when I made a decision and said, you know what, this is what I want for me, I had to understand that that's what I wanted for myself. Everybody not going to want that. I'm not going to try to force it, but I'll always leave the door open if they want to join me. I'm not going to say you stuck where you at forever, but don't make forever decisions and then wish you never did it. Think about that before you do it to the best of your ability. Now, we know circumstantially sometimes you get put where your hand could get forced. It's a very real thing where it's like, your hand could get forced, and that's an anomaly of situations, and that's unfortunate, but at the same time, still try to find a lesson in that, man.
Yeah, I think most people that end up in these situations, they come from these environments that weren't cultivating with love or discipline and shit like that, or direction, or they're not valuing themselves and have a sense of self-love and shit like that. And like I said earlier, when I saw this shit happen to my uncle, I'm like, yeah, that was like a case study in real time of like, yeah, this ain't it. And also I had the benefit because I came from a decent household of like, no, like I have a sense of self-value and self-love, and I care about my future. I'm not thinking about today, whatever. And I always tell myself, if anything, to the early episodes about pillars in your life, if any of these pillars start getting knocked down, or the day I start feeling like, fuck everything, fuck tomorrow, then that'll be the day I was like, fuck it is what it is. But if you really do care about tomorrow, if you care about having a future, you care about your family, your loved ones, your kids, trying to think about anything other than that moment, then that's when you don't make these situations going to that. Those 5 seconds gonna cost you 50 years type shit, forever decisions.
Yeah, not making reckless decisions in the heat of the moment that just are, you're one bad decision away from a horrible, rest of your life.
Yeah.
One bad decision.
And that goes to the accountability as a shield. And, you know, and he referenced that a few times. That's like a great chapter in the art of accountability, because it literally just talks about terms of agreement, literally understanding what you put yourself into. Like what, and if you know, then you can protect yourself from a, it's like if you know, like, yo, my car has 20 miles left in gas. This is a 50-mile trip. I need to get gas before I hit the road, or I'm going to be off on the side of the highway waiting for somebody to come get me gas. Thinking the situation through and understanding what you need to do in order to create the best outcome, right, will put you in a predicament where you can protect yourself. Because if a lot of criminals thought prior to, like, yo, you know what, this actually might end up catastrophic, they not going to do it. And if they do it, then we all have to just say, you know what,
hold it.
You stand on business.
You're still on business. All right, cool. But, why are we talking? You still on business.
I think that your point is more like, it's more relevant to the point of, like, let's say someone pulls up and says, hey, come take a ride with me.
Yeah.
And you may not know what you're getting into, but you may have an idea.
Yeah.
And then, you know, some shit goes off and now you're in a car where a homicide happens. And now your whole life is potentially, you know, you're going down for some shit that your friend did that you may not have even had any idea about or any sort of, you know, pre-planning. But guess what? They're going to charge you. They're going to go to a jury trial. And if you hear that guilty verdict, your life is fucking over.
And you're going to have a lot of resentment. And it's crazy.
And bitterness.
That's why I tell a lot of young boys, man, the remedy is to be busy. Football practice, basketball practice. For one, those sports teach you a lot of things about teamwork and leadership and togetherness. But more importantly, just like being busy just keeps you away from the bullshit. You would rather be busy than bullshit. And so do extracurricular shit. Who gives a fuck if they call you weird or whatever. The excuse is not you ain't down. It's like, this motherfucker's busy. You just not around. And sometimes it pays when you coming from those environments to just not be around. If you can go to basketball, play basketball across the town somewhere else, and you can go play football in another area where it's not everybody you know, you expand. Because one thing that I'll say before we give our final thoughts is, like, your resources really matter. Like, the relationships you have is worth more than money. It's invaluable. And that literally will cultivate the culture that you come up in, right? The people you are able to call. One of the things that always helped me was I was smart. So being smart allowed me to know other smart people. So when it was time for me to kind of like deviate from my environment that I came up in, I had other people that I was comfortable with, that I knew already, that I trusted, that I knew that I can go to college with and have still long-lasting friendships with, because we had similar interests in other areas that wasn't attached and associated to the hood. So that's why my only thing about when you taking these juveniles and you sending them to placements, you're connecting them with other people who are like them in that space, and they just grow together. The best thing would be to isolate them in an area that's unfamiliar, to force them to learn culture-shocking behaviors that's different than like what they're accustomed to. That's why when you said it, I was like, yo, sending juveniles to military school might actually be cool, because there's going to be a culture shock of having to be disciplined. You can't have that. Nobody can't tell me nothing. I'm such and such. I'm this. I'm none of that fucking matter. You in here, you're going to do these push-ups like the rest of you. You're going to be disciplined. And when men start to be disciplined for their actions, you know, then they don't do it. Like, the only thing that protects you in any environment is the consequences that could arise from what you do. And if it's no consequences, anything is possible. So with that being the case, you know what I mean? I just think, as a young man, you watching this, I hope you could take something from it. I want you to elaborate on where they can find you and all that, but give your final thoughts as well. So we'll do that. Just find things that you can do that you enjoy. Meet people that's in the things that you love to do that's different than the environment you come up in, and lean more towards that. No matter, and be okay with being looked at as whatever, because that won't matter in 10 years. I guarantee you.
You know, and do things that are difficult. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself, and you're going to find a more, you know, ingrained sense of your self-purpose when you push yourself either mentally, physically, or spiritually beyond limits that you have either self-imposed. And you will learn a lot about yourself. And it's not even just in the military where, you know, you're in those moments where it's pouring rain in the mud and you're wet, cold, and hungry, and, you know, you hate your life, but you get through it. And any sort of physical activity, whether it's an extracurricular like sports or boxing or whatever you're going to do, you know, find yourself, and it will teach you self-discipline. It will teach you accountability, and it will help you make better decisions going forward, so you don't end up a statistic or in a position that you are going to spend years of your life trying to rectify in the future. So that would be my final thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll bring home, I feel like the buzzword today was discipline.
Yeah.
And I'll give my dad his personal flowers of my foundation, where when I think about discipline, I think about my dad, where my dad was never the smartest, he wasn't the sharpest, but one thing he had was discipline. And whether it took him from when he was playing football, when he went into the military, when he became a cop, when he went back and got his master's degree, when he retired at 50, and everything he always told me, I tell you, his 5 speeches he had, everything always revolved around just being disciplined, being, if you're going to say something, do it. If you're going to be there, be on time, be early. If someone give you like a layup, some not inside information, but like a tip, advice to do something, do it immediately. Don't wait, don't bullshit, don't procrastinate. And a lot of people just lack that example, just a sheer example of somebody doing that and being, I'm going to do the best of my ability. If you're going to start something, finish it. Yeah. And those different nuggets of gems, I always think about him and how much it benefited him, and just don't we say you're gonna do whatever. So I'll give him that. That was flowers for sure.
Even last thing, the example you spoke on both ends of how it impacted you. Your uncle was the example of, okay, this is if I go this way. And your dad was the example of staying disciplined and, you know, all of these different things that built your core value system. And I think that's why, to your point, the role model and then mentoring and giving back is so essential, because now we have to be that example. So I hope that we can serve as that example for somebody that's listening, no matter what age you are. I don't care if you're in your adolescent years, your early adult years, or if you're older than we are. It's never too late to learn yourself. It's never too late to find yourself. It's never too late to challenge yourself. Just do what you got to do to choose to have a better future moving forward. Whatever your future look like, it can be from going from 50 to 60, from 40 to 50, 30 to 40, 20 to 30, or 10 to 20, whatever that look like. Do what you got to do to make your future better, and do it at the edge of comfort. Do it going off the cliff of comfort, because it's nothing there for you. Everything that you want is on the other things, all of the shit, on the other side of all of the shit you got to go through to get there. So that's what I'll conclude with. Hey, Justin, let them know where they can find you, and you know, everything. Give them all your spill.
Well, thank you again for having me on here. So I'm on Instagram. I do most of my business on there. You can find me. It's at _KPAC for KPOC _ at the end. Also, we 877 KPAC Law, 24/7. You can call, text me. Again, 877 KPAC LAW for any sort of criminal defense or personal injury, car accident, slip and fall case. I'm your guy, and I'll do the best I can for you.
Do you do child support court though?
I do not do child support court. I try to stay away from the family stuff, but if you have a child support issue, I can plug you in with somebody.
People want to know. Q, let them know.
Right on Q Live, right as in the right side, on QUE, right live, right on Q Live.
And y'all can follow me at Wolf WSE. Pretty much on every platform, and then you can follow the network at wolfnetwork.wsc, and you can also subscribe to our channel. And please, please, please,
yes sir,
as you let people know, we grow. So we need you to share this. We need you to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and we need you to tell a family member. We need you to tell a youth male. We need you to tell a youth female. We need you to tell a grown woman. We need you to tell your pastor. We need to tell the E-man. We need you to tell everybody that you see.
Tell your parents.
Tell everybody. Tell your parents.
And grab a copy of Art of Accountability. It's a great book.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for that plug. Grab a copy of The Art of Accountability and Cheating is Not Cheating. And just stay tuned as we continue to grow. We want you to grow with us as we continue to learn. We want to teach you things. And as we continue to lead, we want you guys to follow. So don't go nowhere. Until next time, we see y'all again. The Wolf has spoken. We out.
Yes, sir.